Garrett, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Mayo Man.
That's a solid one. I was not expecting all that. I'm so sorry.
Well, folks,
we're saved.
We're saved. Folks, today we're going to be going over the comics section of Phantom Mayo, which is a pillar that we have not yet dove into
We
as
are
much.
finally putting up this pillar is what we're doing.
Yes, we are. The pantheon of Mayo, as you say, is now standing firm.
Oh, we got all the pillars underneath. The great Mayo, the great M.
The great Mayo.
Yes. Making that happen.
Yep. So guys, here's what we're going to do. We're starting off with a two-parter here. We're going to start off reading the very first appearance of Superman and the very first appearance of Batman. And in this video, we're going to be talking about Action Comics #1, which was from June of 1938. And this is the first appearance of Superman, and we are reading this from this 80 Years of Superman Action Comics book here. I am a very big superhero comic books guy. Garrett is a very big, a little bit everything else. A little bit Conan, a little bit of this and that. And so Superman is my favorite character. Love, love, love Superman. Have a ton of Superman in this closet here behind us. I guess what you guys see is just Star Wars. But
behind this beautiful backdrop.
Yes.
In this wonderful, expensive studio that we are breaking the bank for to bring you the best top quality content that the Mayo can bring you.
Right. Believe it or not, it's not hot behind us.
Yes.
It is actually a closet.
We know you're like, how has this snow speeder just been hovering this entire time behind us?
Right. And this whole side is just absolutely stacked with long boxes of my comics. About half of them are Superman. I love Superman. So we're reading this. Action Comics 1000 came out in 2018, and part of that was this 80 Years of Superman book. Highly recommend picking this up. What it does is it goes through some of the high points of Action Comics throughout its long history, 80-year history, and it'll give you, a comic from kind of each era and just let you be excited about it. Some good periodicals, some stories about Superman that people had written for this book. Very good. Highly recommend checking this one out. So Garrett, let's get into it, buddy.
Yeah.
We're talking about Superman here, probably the most important comic book character of all time when it comes to superhero comics.
Yep.
Really helped to mainstream things. Like I said, this came out in June of 1938, and a lot of people consider this comic being the start of the superhero genre, as well as the start of kind of the golden age of comics.
Yeah.
They kind of break comics down into a few different ages. Primarily, the ones that you'll hear about are the Gold and Silver Age. And this would be considered, prime golden age right here. And this comic book was sold for 10 cents at the time, which would be the equivalent of maybe a little over $2 now.
Yeah.
So, not bad for the time. And back then, a lot of times what these action comics would do, detective comics, any of these kind of anthology comics, is they'd give you several stories in it. And they would kind of see which ones stick, which ones the fans like, and then they'll turn those potentially into, their own titles.
Yeah.
If they think that they have the legs.
Yeah.
Which certainly happened with Superman. And here in this first appearance, we see Superman do a lot of fun things. He protects a woman from a husband who is trying to beat her.
Yeah.
Which is going to be a common thread through all the Golden Age. Superman's great at that.
Oh, it's kind of funny that if I were to think of any medium from the 30s to even probably up until the 90s, even still today we see it so much, but especially then, it's saving the damsel in distress.
Yep, it's damsel in distress.
It's peak macho man masculinity period, and it's just you save a beautiful woman. And
absolutely.
He
does that a couple times in this.
Yeah.
He saves the wife beater, saves her from the wife beater. He also saves a woman who has been condemned to the electric chair.
Yep.
And he proves her innocence.
Yep.
He stops the United States from joining the war in Europe, down in South America with some slimy dudes.
Yep.
What else does he do? Let's see.
Lois Lane.
Oh yeah, he goes on a date with Lois Lane. They run into some trouble on the date, and he makes the guy's life absolute hell.
Yep.
And this whole thing is set up. This will give you the first origin of Superman.
Yeah.
This will change a few times once Superman caught on.
Yeah.
They started to really go into the weeds on Kansas and his parents and how they came from Krypton. None of that stuff's in this book. The idea is, okay, alien, planet destroyed, lands on Earth, people pick him up, and he's strong because, how crickets are strong and they've been on Earth for a long time. Well, his species was on their planet for a long time, so he's strong. Later down the road, they'll shift this to where they'll say, Well, the gravity was just different on Krypton.
Yeah.
And just how like ants or whatever can lift however many times their weight on Earth, he is like that, but to us.
Yeah.
And then later it would be switched to, well, Krypton's sun was a red sun,
Yeah.
and the radiation is different from the yellow sun, and that gives him his powers. And that's kind of what they've sort of stuck with.
Yeah.
But at first here, what do you think about the origin of how he's super?
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up first. This feels like a comic that you can almost break down panel by panel.
There's about 5 stories within about 10 pages here.
Yeah. And so I thought it was super funny. Literally, the origin story is like 4 panels. It is literally just a dad sends his son to another planet while his is being destroyed.
Yep.
A man finds him in a rocket ship and takes him to an orphanage. There's a picture of baby Superman lifting up something really
a chair.
heavy.
That's like a sofa chair, like
Yes.
a lazy boy.
and then the very next thing is just Superman, champion of the oppressed. And
Yes.
that is the origin story, which I thought was, I liked it in the sense of, you see any movie now, and this is always a gripe I have with Batman, because they especially do it in fucking Batman. Here's his origin story at the beginning of every single new Batman series that comes out. It's, yes, I know what happens. I don't need to see his parents get shot again. And so, in a way, it's kind of funny because they didn't give the in-depth, that thing that we know him for, but they just were like, let's introduce this guy and then let's get right into the action. And one of the things that struck me, which is why I had to double check before, is they call him champion of the oppressed.
Yeah.
And
that's the title of this story in Action Comics. It's Superman, champion of the oppressed.
And the reason I really like that is when we see any Hollywood film with superheroes, and I definitely think it's just the Hollywood thing, the stakes are always way higher. It is, we're saving the planet from something unworldly. And this one's cool because this is something that we can all kind of get with. It's Superman just protecting everyday people. He's protecting just the law and justice in the very first one of saving the lady. And I really like the artwork, and they always include the little clock because he has 15 minutes in every panel. The clock moves a little bit further.
I thought that was brilliant too. The little time crunch they do to make you know the stakes.
Yes, you're like, I gotta get to the next panel, and see what's gonna happen. So I really like that. And then, the very next one is he's helping the wife from her beating husband. And that is just, that's something that we all unfortunately know happens in the world. And it's not, oh, here he's off to fight aliens, something that we can't even really fathom. And then the next one is him getting pushed around by a bunch of dudes while he's just on a date. And we've all experienced, we're like, oh, we finally caught, the special lady. And now we're going to run in and just have to be on the lookout for every other horny male that's going to be trying to get her.
The competition.
Yes, yeah. And then in the very end, it's you're rooting for him because you've been there. You've been in that sense of, wow, look at just another man swooping in kind of thing. And then he like takes him. And I thought this was really funny that he hangs him up by his pants on a fit or like a pole. Yeah, and it's really funny because that's something that's so old school. That's something that our generation, when they think of bullying, is not something that happens. Whereas like my grandpa's age, I'd be like, yeah, my grandpa probably put someone up on his underwear on a flagpole. Like, I think it's really funny. It fits the times, but handles human issues that have always been there.
No, and I think, I have a few things based on what you said. I mean, Superman giving a guy a wedgie is pretty badass.
Yeah.
And it's honestly kind of sad. The domestic violence issue.
Yes.
The fact that was a hot topic, pre-World War II in these comics, and it's still a hot topic today is very sad.
Yeah.
And
80 years later.
Yeah. What I like about these kind of golden age stories is this is kind of known for being the first mainstream superhero comic.
Yeah.
And so we don't have a universe.
Yeah.
The two characters won't even meet until World's Finest.
Yeah.
And so, or maybe it was Superman, or it might have been a World's Fair comic.
Yeah.
Where they meet for the first time.
Yeah.
But that's years down the road.
Yeah.
And so there is no universe. There is no world-ending enemy.
Yeah.
Because what people want was something grounded.
Yeah.
Domestic violence happens down the street.
Yep.
Corrupt politicians are out there.
Spencer kicked my ass right before this thing happened.
So like when you see this Superman tackle those issues, it actually probably read more interesting than what like a world-ending villain would have at the time.
Yeah.
And for us now, where you started to run into those is as time went on and you wrote, however many Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, stories for 20 years.
Yeah.
You can only go so far with wife beaters.
Yeah.
And so you had to eventually move to more threats.
80 years of wife beaters
Would have been awesome.
would.
We wouldn't have that problem anymore.
Yeah.
Kids would grow up reading this and say, God, what a jerk.
Yeah, like who does that anymore?
So there's something to be said about just the simple time here.
Yeah.
Where, those are the issues that Superman is tackling.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I mentioned I'm a huge Superman fan.
Yeah.
The reason why is because when you read Superman, it's not that he is overpowered.
Yeah.
Because his powers don't matter.
Yeah.
His morals matter.
Yeah.
And that's what I always try to tell people that are skeptical to get into Superman, is Superman is very different than Batman. Batman, it's really easy to overdo how badass he is.
Yeah.
Superman can be badass because the Superman comics, he's only badass when he has to be.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he's just good old boy. Nothing feels more American than
Yeah.
Superman. He's patriotic. He is a good human first. And so I always feel like he's the ideal to strive towards.
Well, and for you to bring that up is actually great, because I didn't make me think of this until now, but when you read modern comic books, there'll be a whole page, or even sometimes just the entire page is just an action sequence.
Yeah.
And this one, there's literally just, he busted down a door, and they go, "What are you doing?" And then it's him holding him, and it says, "He fainted." and that's the action. It's you aren't invested in this fight scene because we know how badass he is, and he's just taking on a random Joe, but he's doing the right thing. And you and I have talked about this before, way before we started any of this wonderful series that we've been doing for years. But
that one video every 6 months
is one of the things that I gravitated away from Batman and Superman things is, you can see there's a Superman, and I think it's an old movie where Lois Lane dies and he flies around the earth and just rotates it backwards to turn back time.
That's Superman 1. That's the first Superman movie.
Yeah, and so you hear stuff like that and you're just like, yeah, the guy is invincible. Like, what's the point of reading these? But then you can get into this where it's so human. It's so, you're rooting for the good guys.
Absolutely. That is what, and
it's a moral story.
Yeah, it's a moral story. And that is where I think Superman excels. He's the father that I want to end up being someday. He's the husband that I want to be someday. He's the good citizen that I want to be.
Yeah.
He's like the perfect ideal man to strive towards.
Yeah.
And this book does a good job of showing you the difference between a well-mannered man and a total douche.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's what you want to be. Here's what you don't want to be. Otherwise, Superman's going to kick your ass.
You could, and it's funny because you can even look at Superman and you can be like, he is the most powerful being on the earth. He could literally and they even say it at some point in that comic, I can't remember what point it is, but when they kind of come to light that there's this powerful human being, it's the governor's office. And he goes, "Thank God this man could do anything that he wanted, but he's on the side of the law and justice."
Yeah.
And that's the point of it, is you could be the richest man, the strongest man, any kind of man that you think is just powerful. And that doesn't mean you can't be a decent human on top of it.
Well, that's why Lex Luthor is such a good foil for Superman. Lex Luthor is the man in power that's the bad guy.
Yeah.
And they are the perfect quarrel for each other.
Yes.
Because, Lex is just always jealous of Superman's attention.
Yeah.
And Lex will do these schemes where he'll pretend to be doing really good deeds.
Yeah.
Even though it's for something evil beneath the surface, and Superman will make him feel like shit.
Well, and it's funny because that's what makes certain villains so much better than other ones, is when they want the same thing as the good guy, the protagonist. When the antagonist wants the exact same thing as the protagonist, they make for some of the best villain stories. And yeah, I mean, just to piggyback on what you're saying. So
let me ask you this. Let's get into kind of the comic itself. What did you think of the artwork in this comic?
Oh, I absolutely love the artwork. And it's really funny. I mean, you can look at any today's comic book and the artwork is going to be almost realistic. They can make it so grungy, they can make it themed to exactly the kind of story they're trying to tell. And something about this old school artwork, just kind of original golden comic, it's just fun. I think it can be really great and detailed and really show exactly the characteristic of the person you're looking at without showing you every single pore on his face.
Yeah.
And it gives you just the right amount of information, and then just, it has so much fun color. I love the artwork on it.
I love it too. And here's why. Because it speaks to the storytelling.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, in comic books, the writer writes a story.
Yeah.
And it's the artist's job in the panels given to tell that story visually.
Yeah.
You should be able to read a comic book story without even having the words.
Yes.
And this comic does that.
Yeah.
And it's so ahead of its time in that. We don't need the chair to look great.
No.
The chair can be an outline of a chair painted red.
Yep.
Because the chair doesn't matter.
Yep.
What matters is that there's a baby lifting the chair. And
Yes.
we know that that's our main character,
Yeah.
and he's strong as a baby.
Yeah.
That's all we need to know.
Yeah.
Perfect panel. Done.
Yeah.
On to the next one. Like, in the Champion of the Oppressed thing, they didn't even put an S in Superman.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. He's the champion of the oppressed. He looks badass. We don't
Yeah.
need to even draw the S.
Yeah.
So it's time, because you don't want to draw that, but it's also all you need.
Well, and to talk about, you don't need the words. The Whitebeard story is literally, you could sum it up in the 3 panels that it has. It starts off, the husband is holding her down and he has something in his hand and he's hitting her with.
You know
The
exactly what's happening.
Yes. The next one is Superman entering the room.
He like busts through the
Busts
door,
through the
fucks
door.
up the wall.
Yeah, and it's funny because he does that in like the first 2 stories when he goes in the governor's thing and there's like, he's protected behind a steel door.
You mean this one?
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny. He's like, fuck doors. And
I
I'm
love
like, that's
Superman.
his arch enemy of anything. He fucking hates him. So he gets, and to continue on, the next one is literally just the man fainting. And that's it. That's literally a story without words. Great.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That the art services the story perfectly.
Yeah.
And that's all you need.
Yeah.
People get so hung up on, okay, well, we got to make the lady hot, and we got to make the guy's muscles look good, and we
Yes.
got to do this. You could just draw barrel-chested Superman.
Yep.
Don't even bother with any abs. You know that's Superman.
Yeah.
You know he's strong.
Yep.
And you don't need to know anything else.
Yep.
And yeah, I love the art in this. It's
Yeah.
old school, and I will speak to the words. The words are well crafted.
Yeah.
And here's why I think that. Because you can put a million words on a page
Yes.
and take away from that art.
Yeah.
And they will do that in a lot of comics, all the way through to the 1990s, through the
Yeah.
90s. I think we're just now hitting the right amount of words on a page.
Yeah.
But there's not that many words in this. And they tell you about 4 or 5 different stories over about 100 panels. And each page is about 9 to 10 panels.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stories happening here, a lot of storytelling happening here with very few amounts, of dialogue.
There's maybe like 2 or 3 conversation bubbles
Right.
in a panel. And even then, it's one sentence. It's 6 words.
And they even find a way to mix in the thoughts
Yes.
before his speech. And that's something that they don't do now in comics.
Yeah.
That maybe we'll put like a notebook that the character will be saying. But the thought bubbles sometimes work.
They do it when Lois slaps the guy who's trying to come up to her. And his thought bubble is, way to go, Lois. But his speech, which is right below it, goes, Lois, don't. Because he's trying to maintain his character of who he is.
Yeah.
And so it is really cool because you don't get that. It's everything has to be set out. This, it almost feels, it respects the reader's intelligence level.
Right.
We don't have to say it.
Let's talk about a couple of the other pieces of Superman that we know, just being general Superman fans, we know are the core.
Yeah.
Like that he's a reporter. This even small story
Yeah.
details that, well, he's a reporter at the Daily Star.
Yeah.
And so we get that aspect of him, that he reports on Superman,
Yeah.
right? And we also get that other kind of piece of the origin is the relationship with him and Lois Lane.
Yeah.
That, he likes Lois, and she doesn't really care that much for him. But we also get that other layer of that, which is Clark Kent needs to be mild-mannered reporter
Yeah.
that doesn't really have the stones to do much in the way of fighting or anything like that.
Can't
Because he,
attract any attention.
yes, whereas Superman is the polar opposite in this. He's actually full-on badass, more so than
Yep.
normal.
Yep.
And they are able to tackle all those themes that become something that still work today
Yeah.
in this very first issue.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that surprises me anytime I read this.
Yeah. Well, and it's cool because, like you were kind of mentioning, he has moments of badassery in this. Where he actually says something. I feel like in modern comic books, when villain, just the run-of-the-mill pawn is just like pulls out a gun, Superman doesn't do anything in today's things. He'll just kind of fly and beat him up. This one, he's like, put that toy away.
I know.
Like, he has like sassy remarks a little bit, and
Yeah.
and which is kind of cool. It's kind of refreshing a little bit. It adds a little bit of humor, but this is a really fun comic because it sets up one of the most grandiose superheroes of all time, if not the biggest. They do it in 8 pages through 4 different stories in lightning quick time, but without making it seem like it's just this rushed hosh posh garbage.
No, it doesn't feel
It's so well crafted.
It doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel too verbose, like
Yep.
too long. Somehow they managed to make like a near perfect comic here,
Yeah.
and I think they, and obviously they hit lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. You know, and this is impossible because we're 85 years past his inception.
Yeah.
But you really
Throw back to our 2 videos to his
conception. Yes. You really are not a Superman reader, correct?
Yeah.
So this is kind of one of your first introductions to Superman.
Yeah.
Which is why this video is kind of a great idea.
Yeah.
It's hard to put yourself back in 1938 or put yourself to where you'd never heard of Superman. But do you think that you'd be interested to read more of Superman based off just this?
Well, and actually, that is a fantastic question.
It's kind of the impossible question, but
Well, and I actually really like that you brought it up because there's, at the very end of it, you realize that they're going into World War II. And so you are us in 1938, and you turn the radio, and all you hear is, okay, Poland has been invaded, their allies have done absolutely nothing, and the war machine of Nazi Germany is churning. Like,
Yep.
1 year from that would be 1939 when World War II officially starts in Europe.
yes.
The U.S. is still 2 years away, if not almost 3, since it was 1941 December. And
Right.
so you're looking at it thinking, this is totally removed. It's almost beyond realism. And then at the very end, they bring it right back into something that is historically accurate, or at the time, currently accurate.
And maybe a little bit scary in the back of people's minds.
Yeah, everybody is thinking, are we going to join this? We had the Great War just 30 years ago. Is this really going to repeat?
Yeah, we're dealing with a depression, and here Superman saves us, even just at one more day of peace.
Yeah. Well, and that is something else, another added thing to it, the Great Depression. That's another important thing to
Yeah.
mention as well. So props for bringing it up because I totally escaped that. And so, yeah, I mean, you're for 10 cents, hell yeah, why not? It
Well,
gets you away from everything.
And that's what's badass about Action Comics at the time is what comics wanted to do. They knew that your money was important.
Yeah.
So they wanted to give you huge bang for your buck. And that's why they come out with Action Comics.
Yeah.
And you get Superman, you also get Slam Bradley. Maybe actually that might have been Detective Comics, but you get Zatara.
Yeah.
You get a bunch of these fun stories all in one, and each story has multiple stories. So you pay 10 cents, which is like about $2, which
Yeah.
is a lot during the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And you get a lot of story out of it. You get a lot of content out of it. And that's why these anthology stories were so popular back in the days, because you get bang for your buck,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and imagine too, you're in an age where you probably still don't have a TV, and if not, there's definitely it's not a color TV, and your main source of entertainment is the radio, and so this is really fun. It's a great visual story as well, and I mean I can only imagine how much more fun that would be than a radio.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when you're at home and your old man is like, "Fuck you, I'm listening to what I want to listen to on the radio."
Right. And I mean,
well, I got a copy.
the great thing is whether you're a radio or a comics person doesn't matter, because within the next couple of years, Superman would become the most dominant force in comic books.
Yeah.
He'd be the most popular character. He would get his own self-titled book, which is one of the first ones to happen, Superman. And Action Comics still ran, and Action Comics switched to only being about Superman.
Yeah.
So they would tell multiple Superman stories in Action Comics and multiple Superman stories there. They had the newspaper strips that would run
Yeah.
every single week.
Yeah.
They also had the radio show that would run. They had old Max Fleischer, the animated cartoons.
Yeah.
They would eventually have TV serials. I mean, he was all over everything. Advertising the war effort.
Yeah.
Superman sold a ton of war bonds.
Yep.
I mean, he became such a powerhouse character
Yeah.
that even through the 50s, 60s, into the 70s, any DC comic would
Yeah.
say, DC Comics, a Superman publication.
That's wild.
And it's weird because, and I bring that up only because in modern times, Batman has sort of taken that role since about the 2000s.
Yeah.
Batman is now kind of the most popular superhero in
Since
media.
the greatest Batman film with George Clooney. is when-
Since yeah, 1997 changed everything. I would love to talk about Batman movies with you, but that was probably the most blockbuster movie for me growing up.
Dude, it's funny. That was the first Batman movie that I ever saw, and I absolutely loved it. I want to be Batman for Halloween that year for Halloween.
I still have my mask in the garage.
Dude, I can still remember. I thought it was badass. It came with all the pecs.
It
and
came
the
with
abs
the
and,
ab plate.
and then the belt with a ton of gizmos on it.
We
and
were
with
probably the
bat
same
symbol on it.
character that Halloween.
Probably, yeah.
And all the action figures were badass. They made a gazillion of them. They made variants of everything.
Well, and the villains in it. I mean, you have Poison Ivy, you have
Mr. Freeze.
Bane, and yeah, Mr. Freeze, who's played by freaking Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Which
And-
Bane, so Mr. Freeze, that origin with Nora just came about in about 1993-94.
Yeah.
So that was the fresh new origin.
Yeah.
And Bane just came around in 1992, 93, 94
Yeah.
with Nightfall.
Yeah.
So those are like the two hottest, freshest villains.
Yeah.
It's not like they went back and did like, I mean, Batman Returns had already done it, but it's not like they went to like Catwoman, Penguin, Joker. They went like the hot, fresh new villains. I'm not saying it's a good movie. I'm just saying, kind of ballsy.
Yeah. Well, and when I was a kid, I loved it.
Me too.
Like,
I still watch that.
people hate it, but I had it on VHS.
I still have it on VHS. We can watch it right after this.
Hell yeah!
That just gets at the fun of comics.
We're gonna do a live viewing of VHS Batman with our
Well-
commentary over it.
Live reaction video. Anyways, so you would continue reading Superman? Do you think if you could put yourself back in that time?
Yeah, without a doubt. It's bright, it's exciting, it's human and optimistic and current. Not to keep listening, but lots
Would
of
you
perks.
give Superman a chance now? So we mentioned that you're not currently reading Superman. You've never really kept up with current Superman comics. Would you consider giving Superman a chance after reading his first appearance now?
I would continue. I would, and not to knock on anything new because I don't know anything about it, but I would keep reading this one. I would keep reading this line of the comics. Like,
well, you're in luck. I also have Action Comics #2.
oh, there you go.
So we can read that one. You know,
Not just saying that I don't want to try the new stuff, but this one's exciting. I'm a history nerd. My grandpa and my mom were both history teachers, and so it would be really cool just to read something that is a live, real thing of what people were thinking in 1938 with the upcoming war.
I will tell you this right now. You're not alone, because the beginnings of Superman is one of the most interesting things possible to read about in comics. And that's why you get Superman's origin retold so many times in different little ways. You know, he lands in Soviet Russia. You know, he lands here. You know, they retell it, and I will tell you right now. You mentioned earlier the Batman origin is stale and it gets old every time they tell it. It gets worse.
Yes.
The Superman origin gets better every time they do it. I have multiple comic runs in here where they redo his origin just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's good every time. Those early Superman years, even retold in a modern lens, are always good.
Yeah.
So what I think we should do is I'll get maybe a couple basic Superman runs that I think you'd like, that are popular. And we'll just see what happens if you like some of the new stuff.
Yeah, without a doubt.
All right. Well, let us know what you guys think about Action Comics #1. This one is pretty easy. Well, it's not easy to find a copy of. It's easy to, and if you have one, consider gifting it to us.
We'll reward you in lots of mayo.
Yeah, lots of mail. It's easy to read, though. It's easy to find free online. Even DC Comics, I think if you sign up for their subscription, you can get a free one. You don't have to pay for anything. This is one of the free books that they give you to get you interested in comics. You go to a lot of Comic Cons, stuff like that. There's a lot of free copies of this that they do for a free comic book day, stuff like that. There's also, it can be found in Superman the Golden Age, Volume 1, which I have, which is a hardcover collection of a lot of stuff from the from the 30s and the 40s. And then they've also got those 80 Years of Superman. They've reprinted this a bunch of times, is what I'm saying. So you can easily find cheap or free versions of it without having to torrent something or.
You don't have to go on LimeWire.
Yes, you don't. You don't. Well, yeah, guys, what we're going to do, we're going to head over to Detective Comics 27, talk about the first appearance of Batman. But hopefully you enjoyed this little digression into Superman, because like I said, there's something wholesome and American about Superman that you can't quite find with anything else, even in the Captain America, in my experience. It's just been done better, and it was done better here. So yeah, let's head over to Batman, and thank you guys for watching. And yeah, have a Mayo day.
Thank you.
Thank you!
I don't think Batman has a pose.
Just stoic and angry.